I'm going to go chalk here. I mean, Nick Fairley makes sense for them on so many levels. They need to never really replace Al Hainsworth, so they could use that impact presence on the interior of their D-line. And I mean, they hired the Auburn defensive line coach to be their defensive line coach, so they have somebody on their staff who knows Nick Fairley inside and out, who has proven he can get the best out of him. It just makes so much sense. They're going to have a better scouting report on Nick Fairley than any team in the league. And I will say this, if the Titans don't take Nick Fairley, that's going to be a pretty big indictment of him. And I think that's going to raise the eyebrows of other teams that might be considering him and say, hey, what's wrong with him? What do they know that we don't know? And if he gets past the Titans at 8, Fairley could drop a little bit. So, I mean, I just have a hard time seeing them pass on Fairley. I know in the past couple of days the Titans have been linked to Jake Locker and even Andy Dalton. Now, Locker, I think, would be a stretch in the number 8 overall. Dalton would be a monumental stretch at number 8 overall. I mean, crazier things have happened, but not many. So, Stuber, what do you think about the Titans?
Well, I'll tell you what. The defensive coordinator doesn't make the draft picks, though, for any franchise. So he could suggest and recommend all day, every day, whatever he wants to do. That's a franchise that does need a quarterback. That's a franchise that could use some help on the defensive line. But, you know, they did draft Eric Morgan last year. And, you know, I think Nick Fairley plays the interior position. But, again, you know, there's a lot of teams that are down on him. You know, maybe the defensive coordinator likes him, but the decision-makers there may not. This is a wild card pick for me. And if I'm the Titans, I'm seriously looking at this. And this may sound a little bit crazy, but why not Julio Jones here? You know, they need a quarterback still, but again, Julio Jones, with Kenny Britt's troubles and not really having that standout wide receiver. You know, Kenny Britt shows signs of being a true number 1, but he's never been consistent. He's a guy who's always been kind of lackluster overall. Julio Jones, to me, would be a pretty decent fit there, and he has great appeal, and I'll tell you what, it's good value there, number 8.
Shane, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Julio Jones could be a really intriguing fit with what's happened with Kenny Britt, but Nick Fairley just seems like a slam dunk. It's a big need. They're going to be bringing back Derek Morgan, the DN out of Georgia Tech they got last year that kind of had a redshirt year for them due to injury. So, I mean, this can go from being one of the poorest defensive lines in the NFL to one of the best in 1 year if they get a guy like Fairley that's that disruptive. So I think that's just really intriguing to me. And this defense is built for the now. So I think if they get a guy like Fairley, really the quarterback is the one piece. That maybe another offensive playmaker is really the one piece that they're lacking. This is a team that I feel is a little bit better than their spot at 8. But I think the biggest surprise of the draft is that Scott did not take Andy Dalton here at number 8. I was thoroughly surprised.
And Brandon.
You know, again, Nick Fairley slam dunk. He was on my personal radar to go to the Broncos for months and months, and you know the only thing that scares me is the lack of production from him. You know, the whole 1-year wonder thing. It worries me a little bit. The comparison to Albert Hainsworth scares me, but you know what I talk about a freak. You know, watching this guy on tape, whenever he plays and he wants to play, his motor is unbelievable. You know, he can get pressure from the inside. He can press the quarterback from the inside. He'll chase down the quarterback on a bootleg from the inside. I mean, really, his athleticism is amazing. And I'd love for them to look at a quarterback here. I think that they have huge problems in that neck of the woods. But I would have taken Nick Fairley if I was on the clock. That's for sure.
All right, next up we got Stuber at number 9, Dallas Cowboys.
I'll say that I don't think the Dallas Cowboys stay at number 9. I think either Jerry Jones is going to try to move up and get a Patrick Peterson or try to trade back and collect a pick and then maybe target an offensive lineman at some point. But if they do stay here at number 9, I think that they will go offensive line. I think Tyron Smith will be the selection. You know, he's a guy who could be their bookend. For the next 10 years, you know, I think they need an athletic guy out there to help protect the quarterback. Tony Romo needs as much protection as he can get, so I think Tyron Smith will be a very solid pick here.
Well, and I will say this, I think the Cowboys are doing a very good job of misdirection because I think in the last 2 weeks I've heard they quote-unquote love about a half a dozen prospects, and I've heard that they love Tyron Smith. I've heard that there's no chance they're going to take Tyron Smith. Who else have I heard? Costanzo, Karimi, Peterson, Mukamara, J.J. Watt, Cameron Jordan. So, the Cowboys are linking themselves to a lot of names. Where the truth lies, I guess we'll find out in a couple of days. But I think the offensive tackle makes sense for them. Regardless of whether it's at number 9 or if they move down a little bit and get somebody later. Jerry Jones has not drafted an offensive tackle in the first round since he purchased the team in 1989, more than 2 decades. The time has come. I think they need to fortify that offensive line and protect Tony Romo so he can get the ball to all that skill position talent they have. So I like the pick. I think it makes sense for them. Shane?
Yeah, I think it would be the logical decision, but that hasn't always been Jerry Jones' MO, is to go with a logical decision to help this team per se. And not that he's made bad picks all the time, but it's just sometimes he's gone with the flash. Des Bryant, which on the field looked pretty good last year, and maybe off the field didn't look so good last year. So that's why I wonder about Tyron Smith, and I'm not quite sure what's going to happen at 9. I think if the more they move back, the more likely they are to take an offensive lineman because of Costanzo, because of Karimi, because I think these are also players that they could buy into, and the value is going to be there. But I think if Amukamara is still there at number 9, man, I think Jerry Jones would be hard-pressed to pass on a guy with that type of size-speed combo, with the college resume that he has, at a position of need, and probably a player that he can definitely buy into.
Brandon, Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah, I've been saying Tyron Smith. I really like the pick there. You look at Romo, and he's hurt, every year. He just has no protection. He's running for his life. I've talked to a few huge Cowboy fans being here in New Mexico, and, everyone cites the fact that Jones doesn't take first-round tackles, and you kind of have to wonder if that's the reason they haven't gotten anywhere recently, is because, they have all this amazing talent at their skills positions and, no possible way to get the ball to them. So I like the pick, and despite what all the big Dallas fans around here are saying, I think that that's the smart thing to do. Again, whether or not it's what they'll really do, who knows? Jerry Jones' mind is totally unpredictable, and he'll do exactly opposite what you think. But it's a good pick from my point of view.
Well, and we always talk about all these teams that want to trade down, but who wants to trade up. I think this is an instance where there probably will be a market for that pick. If Julio Jones is there, maybe the St. Louis Rams want to jump up and grab him. Maybe the Kansas City Chiefs even, although that would be a pretty big leap. Maybe the Houston Texans or Detroit Lions want to come up for Prince Amukamara. So I think if Jerry Jones is serious about wanting to move down, I think he'll have some interested parties. So I kind of agree, Chris. I think they can move down a little bit and get an offensive tackle later, whether it's Smith, Costanzo, Karimi, or Sold, or whoever. But I think that would be a smart move on their part. Next up, rounding out the top 10, we have Shane with the Washington Redskins.
The way the board fell, I think this is pretty easy for the Redskins. They lost out on A.J. Green. They lost out on the top quarterbacks. To me, it's between 2 guys. Julio Jones, they want to take the wide receiver out of Alabama, or Jake Locker if they're enamored with the QB from Washington. I tend to lean that a lot of this quarterback talk is a little bit more smoke than it is fire, that these guys are going to fall a little bit further than we think they are on draft day, and that may include Washington. I think if they don't move up for a guy like Gabbert or Newton, that they're going to stick here and ultimately take Julio Jones, wide receiver from Alabama, just a player that is physically gifted. We saw what happened at the Combine with the numbers he put up despite a major injury. That shows heart, too. He was on a run-first team at Alabama, very successful, came in as a highly talented high school prospect. He's got the high character. He wasn't one of these me guys at wide receiver, always calling for the ball or trying to make them throw the ball more. He was content having the Heisman Trophy winner on his team be the running back. So I think Julio Jones would be such a great new kind of face and fresh face of this franchise in Washington, and that's why I think they go with the 10.
Well, and I think that would be great value, and this is probably the worst case scenario for Julio Jones. I don't know what the odds are of him making this far, but I don't even know if it's 50-50. But just to play devil's advocate again, I mean, Washington's desperate for a quarterback. There's no question about that. And I know they can maybe target somebody in the second round, but where they're picking in the second round, there's probably about 4 teams ahead of them in round 2 that are also looking at quarterbacks. So number 41 might not be early enough to get the guy they want if they don't have their third round pick. So if they really want a quarterback, maybe they reach for somebody there at 10. But boy, I think they'd be hard-pressed to pass on Julio Jones. Stuber?
Yeah, I've been saying it since January that I think Jake Locker ends up in Washington some way, somehow. I really do. I think Mike Shanahan has had his eye on Jake Locker since last season. I think that they wanted to take him last year if he entered a draft. I know Julio Jones is an absolute flirt at number 10, but I think they need that quarterback. And Rex Grossman is not going to be the quarterback there. He can maybe be there for one more year while Jake Locker learns and develops. But I think they have to go quarterback here. I really do. Or trade down and try to collect another third-round pick where they can make up for that loss. But I think Jake Locker, like I said, some way, somehow ends up in Washington.
Brandon, what do you think?
I'm sharing a brain with Stuber there. I think that it's got to be a quarterback. You know, I'm quite versed in Mike Shanahan's ways, and you know, I know that quarterback is where he builds his team, and they don't have it right now. You know, who knows what ends up happening with McNabb, but ultimately they don't have an answer there. Julio Jones is an amazing athlete, but I don't know that it's the pick. I think they move around, you know, and I wouldn't take Locker at 10, but knowing Shanahan, you know, we watch him do it with Cutler, and you know, Locker's situation is very similar to Cutler's in that, you know, he had no one to throw the ball to. You know, who did Cutler have to throw the ball to at Vanderbilt? Well, the answer is no one, and Shanahan surprised us and reached out and grabbed him. And I would not be shocked if he does it. I think it's too high for him, and in the best case scenario, they'd be looking to move back 5 or 10 picks. But I think quarterback has to be at the very top of Shanahan's list. I wouldn't be shocked if they make that happen.
Well, and the rumors were last year, before Jake Locker decided to go back to school, that Shanahan was enamored with him. So I wouldn't argue with that pick, personally. Considering their quarterback situation, I'm still on the Jake Locker bandwagon. I still believe within him. I think if you put him with a good coach like Shanahan, he can fulfill that potential, which is immense. And maybe he reminds Shanahan a little bit of John Elway, maybe some of those traits there. One thing to watch out for, too, is the dark horse. There has been talk, maybe they go for either a defensive end or a pass rushing outside linebacker, and that would certainly be a curveball, but I wouldn't totally rule it out because they do have question marks at both of those spots as well, and there should be a lot of good options at both positions there at 10 if they wanted to go that direction. So just something to watch out for as a potential dark horse. Next up, we got Brandon at number 11 with the Houston Texans.
Well, again, it's funny, but exact same. Well, very similar needs to the 49ers. You know, I had 2 players targeted for each team, and I'm basically flipping back and forth. But I'll make your guys' day now, and I'll go ahead and nab Robert Quinn. I think that he's the type of player that Wade Phillips wants in their defense. I think that he's athletic enough to kind of play the joker. You know, he can play outside linebacker, and then he can sit on the end of the line and rush with his hand on the ground. I don't know how they could possibly pass if Quinn is sitting there this deep. I think that Quinn has the potential to be one of the best players in the draft. A lot of people are scared because of the injury history and that sort of thing, but the production is there, and I think that Wade Phillips would be delighted to have it.
Well, and I think the Texans desperately need a pass rusher, and going to that 3-4 defense, they need some new personnel in that front seven, and I'm a Druckwin. I've been written the fifth best player in this whole draft, so I'd like that pick. You know, Camaro would be extremely tempting. I don't think there's any question about that, but I just think they have a little talent in the secondary. I think they're just going to be desperate for guys who can get after the quarterback off the edge, and Robert Quinn can do that, I think, as well as anybody in this draft. And something else to watch out for with them, John McClain from the Houston Chronicle, who's one of the beat writers who really does a great job of covering the draft. He thinks the Texans are going to be aggressive and maybe try to trade up and get a Von Miller. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's too high. But if Patrick Peterson falls out of that top 5, maybe they go after him. So that's something interesting to watch. And if they're picking there at 11, McClain really thinks they're going to go with the pass rusher, even if Amukamara is available. And if it's not Quinn, I know he mentioned Aldon Smith. So I lend a lot of credence to what McClain says. So don't be surprised if they do pass on Prince Amukamara if he's available and go with the pass rusher, whether it be Quinn or Aldon Smith there at 11. Stuber?
Yeah, I like the pick. I think